the quiet moments, you can see what's working across our world. You can hear the sounds of the doers, the problem solvers and consensus builders who are quietly making progress in the face of our greatest challenges.
You have to believe in possibility. You have to cultivate a culture of possibility.
Today, the stakes are higher than ever, and common ground sometimes seems impossible to find.
When civilization itself is in crisis, we must find a way to unite.
The world can often feel like a place where nothing is working. We've heard that before. But that's not our story.
What an extraordinary responsibility for us to keep going so that we can help more people in more places live their story.
When we choose to act, to keep going, to focus on what's possible, things can change.
We need to invest in people where they are because they're going to invest in everybody else around them.
Innovation accelerates, solutions scale, and empowered communities discover paths to building their own best futures.
These commitments and the incredible leaders implementing them are showing us what we can accomplish together when we dare to wonder what is possible.
You committed to action. You focused on solutions that work. And as a result, CGI commitment makers have reached more than 500 million people worldwide.
We have to let communities lead. That is key.
And across the globe, through this community, 10,000 partners strong, your actions and your commitments show us every day what's working in the world. You are leading the way.
The more people that we have contributing in whatever ways that each of us can, the more likely we are to be able to build a healthier, more sustainable, more equitable, and more joyful future.
Please welcome Dr. Chelsea Clinton.
Good morning, everyone. Oh, good morning. I appreciate the participation. We are at a critical moment in our world. Will we create a more sustainable, a healthier, a more just, a more equitable world, or will we not? As disturbing headlines persist and overwhelm our airwaves, we must make the choice to see what's working while also not looking away from human suffering. And always believe that tomorrow can be better because we know what is possible from where progress has been made over centuries, over decades, over years, and even over the last days. Because there is a lot in the world that is working. And in many ways, that's made possible, even exemplified by the people here at CGI, the people you're sitting next to right now, and those you'll hear from over the next 2 days together. In this community, and in the communities you will return to in just a few days, we all make the choice to show up every single day to show what we can do and what we can do together and what we must do together. To do the work, to make it work, and to be part of what's working. And so now I hope that some of our extraordinary commitment makers will join us on stage to share how they are doing the work every day.
I'm John Miller, the founder of Open for Business, and in 2015, I stood on this stage with 14 high-profile business leaders to launch our coalition, taking a stand for LGBTQ+ rights. Around the world, we know that rights are under attack. However, we know that mobilizing the voice of business is really working. Since launch, we've grown into a coalition of 37 global companies working in 59 countries, changing the conversation on LGBTQ+ rights by making the case for equality.
"77% of people feel that they do not know enough about the most urgent crisis facing humanity, climate change. Through offering environmental solutions, not just problems, we can cultivate a generation of young people moving into the workforce as climate solutionists. I'm Sage Lanier, founder of Sustainable and Just Future, and last year I made a commitment to work with universities across the country to make climate solutions a curriculum priority. Since then, we've launched programs in 12 schools, proving that next generation leadership is working.
Across the United States, kids are in crisis, overwhelmed by depression, anxiety, and unintentional overdoses. At Health Information Project, we know empowering youth to take control of their health is working. So we're training high school students to be the health teachers. My name is Bethany Shade, and I am proud to announce our commitment in partnership with the Heckscher Foundation for Children to bring our innovative program to New York and New Jersey high schools this year.
Across rural India, water scarcity and rise in temperature leave children in one of the most vulnerable conditions. I'm Chetna Galasena, and in 2023, we made a commitment to create a coalition to increase the access to water to rural communities. Since then, we had one of the worst drought, and we had to combat the effect of water stress and heat to 150,000 population. We know that remaining innovative while working with the community, it works to create a solution for climate resilience and health equity. One thing I've learned with rural women, and that is never provide poor solutions to poor people. Thank you.
Amen.
In Kenya, I saw period poverty up close, which is why I founded EcoBanner Limited to prove that showing up as an ally for girls and women is not only working, it is essential. I'm Lennox Omondi, and I'm proud to stand here today as a 2024 CGI Fellow and a Greenhouse Cohort member to share EcoBanner's commitment to empowering women and combating plastic waste through sustainably manufacturing biodegradable sanitary towels using banana fibers. Together, we can create a sustainable future, one pad and one girl at a time.
We know migration is a complex global challenge. In Barranquilla, where 11% of our population are Venezuelan migrants, transforming this challenge into an opportunity for growth and innovation is working. By embracing our migrant community, we're changing lives and reshaping the narrative. Today, I, Daniela Cepeda, advisor on migrations of Barranquilla, am proud to announce our city's commitment to replicate our proven integration methodology with other 4 local governments across Colombia. This is how Barranquilla leads by example, turning challenges into catalysts for positive change.
These are just a few examples of the thousands of commitments to action that are working through partnerships, scaling proven local solutions, bringing those local solutions to new areas, investing in nature-based solutions, investing in women and girls, and giving us all more reasons to be optimistic. At the Clinton Global Initiative, our commitments to action didn't reach 500 million people worldwide by focusing on what's broken. Instead, we asked what is working, what is possible, and what must be. And through the work we do here at this meeting and in our day-to-day lives, we continually ask, how can we amplify our work? How can we expand our work? How can we share our work with others so that they can bring it to their local communities? Really, how can each of us always be trying to make a more meaningful impact in more people's lives around the world? And so, while the challenges can feel bigger than ever before, We have to continually reject cynicism and refute those who would always choose to preserve the status quo. Because our work and our commitments have proven what's possible when we reject cynicism and reject the status quo. We can, and I would submit humbly must, choose optimism every day. So let's continue to choose, to act together, to commit together, to work together. And now it's my honor to welcome to the stage someone I've always thought of as the optimist in chief, the problem solver in chief, and my dad, President Bill Clinton.
Hi, daughter.
I love you.
Thank you. Good morning. And welcome to CGI's 2024 annual meeting. I know several of you have traveled a very long way to get here, and I thank all of you for making the effort. I'll be brief this morning so we can get right into things. We've got a good agenda. And Chelsea captured well the reasons we're all here. But I would ask you to think about this one thing over the next 2 days. Since we began CGI back in 2005, the community has made more than 4,000 commitments to action that have now made a positive difference in more than 500 million lives around the world. That means roughly 1 in 16 people on our planet has in some ways been affected by the work that many of you have been doing for 20 years now. We couldn't have achieved that impact without thousands of people looking at the world and making a decision that we can't afford just to see the world as it is. We have to think about it as it ought to be. I see Hillary out there listening. You know, we've been married for 49 years. And I think, well, that is, if I make it till October 26th. Or the 11th, excuse me, we're almost there. Her birthday and our wedding anniversary are the same month. But anyway, that's a long time. And it's still interesting if you are interested in this partnership. What do people do with their lives? Why do we all want to get up every day and make a difference, not just in our own lives, but in the lives of others? It requires a certain vision, and you were the visionaries. You don't look at problems and say that's impossible. You ask instead, what is possible? You don't just throw up your hands, you roll up your sleeves. You don't dwell on the past, you set your sights on the future. Now, over the next 2 days, and long after we leave here, the way you live your life is an ongoing statement about why, no matter what the problem is, all is not lost. An ongoing statement about why the trend lines are better than the headlines. And why, over a long life, the smart money remains on action, not anguish. None of this happens in a vacuum. This year, the backdrop is what has been called the global year of elections, where more than 60 countries with literally billions of people will be voting in national elections. And as you'll see over the next 2 days, we're focusing, yes, on what's working, but also on the fact that strong democratic institutions are a prerequisite to the social impact that we all want to achieve by being here. Making commitments to action that actually deliver real results to real people is the best way we can strengthen faith in those kinds of democratic institutions. So, I'm just about done, but I want to try something. I want to ask those of you who have made a commitment to action this year, or partnered on one, funded one, helped to develop one, championed one, stand up, those of you who are here who made a commitment to action this year. Thank you. Now, stay there. No, don't sit down. I'm doing a deal here. Now, if those of you here have ever played a role in any commitment to action in any previous year of CGI, you stand up. Now, most importantly, if any of you are interested in being part of a commitment now, and you're going to use this meeting to make it happen, get on your feet too. Stand up. Now, look, you can sit if you like. I wanted to make the point that the thing that has kept CGI vital, alive, changing, growing all these years are you and people like you, in good years and bad years, when good things happen and bad things happen to you and others. Somehow, you keep going because you know that you always have some power to build a better tomorrow. So I thank you for being here. I can go a whole year on the energy that I get out of walking the halls at CGI, listening to people's stories, seeing how they don't quit. Look, no point in gilding the lily here. We have a lot of serious challenges. We have dysfunctional governments all over the world that are undermining people's dreams, abusing human rights, doing things they shouldn't do. More and more people seem to be willing to abandon democracy if they just get the results they want right now. And they don't think very much about whether people have a role, a say in what's happening. So we're trying to take some time at this CGI to argue that how we do things will have a big impact on whether we get the result we want, and whether we keep growing together, rising together, coming together, and giving children a more peaceful and hopeful future. I'm still the incurable optimist. I keep hoping that one day most people in the world will say, let's look at the evidence and see what works. Being together, I will say again for the 1,000th time, multiplication and addition works better than division and subtraction. When we do things together, we make better decisions and get better results. So this is our chance to make our contribution. Thank you for being here, and let's get on with the show.
What an extraordinary responsibility for us to keep going. It's about what can we do to help support others to do all that they can do to engage in the ministry of showing up for themselves, their families, their communities, and their dreams.
Please welcome Patricia Velasquez, Adebayo Alanga, Matt Damon, and Secretary Hillary Rodham Clinton.
Thank you. Well, I could not be more excited than I am to moderate this panel with three doers, three people who know what's working and want to make it possible for us to have even more success in helping people. I'm going to start with Matt Damon because Matt has been coming to CGI since 2008, I think, and it was here at CGI when he joined us for the first time that he met Gary White, and the idea for water.org was formed. Since then, Matt and Gary have grown water.org into a massive and well-respected NGO. And in 2022, Matt came back to CGI at our relaunch and made a commitment to action to really scale the work. So, Matt, I'd love to get a progress report. How did you turn an idea that you had with Gary in 2008 into this extraordinary success story of getting clean water to people?
Thanks. Yeah, we did meet here, and we did decide to do this together here, and so this is a really special place for us, obviously. But it really, you know, I was looking for the preeminent expert in this space to partner with. I'd been hunting Gary for a while and knew he was going to be here, so I tracked him down. And Gary at the time, he did the best direct impact work, kind of the traditional charity model of well drilling. And Gary's, most of these water projects, half of them fail within the first 5 years, as you know. And Gary's didn't because of the way he worked within the communities and got community buy-in. And so I had my eye on him. But Gary also had this incredible idea, which he was just starting to work on. He was slowly gaining traction, which was to take the ideas pioneered by Muhammad Yunus and repurpose them for the water space. And in retrospect, it seems very obvious, but at the time, that was a big thought leap for the microfinance institutions because rather than being an income-generating loan, a loan for water was actually an income-enhancing loan. We were basically buying the time back for people, these primarily women who are tasked with the water collection, women and girls, for their families if they don't have access. And so by basically kind of taking this idea and trying to scale it, to give some context, we reached our first million people in 2012, and we had an event, and your husband, President Clinton, was there. He's been a big champion of our work. And he looked at our model, which was basically about trusting the most vulnerable people on the planet, primarily women, to pay back these loans. If you just nudge the markets toward them, they can do the rest. And he knew it was going to work. He got it very quickly. And I'll never forget, he pulled me aside and he said, you just run those numbers up. You run them up. and he was right, because he said, you just become undeniable. And that's what we've been doing. And so for some context, it took Gary 20-something years to hit that first million people, and we're now at 68 million people that we've reached. But the real beauty of that story is that it's these women. 90% of our borrowers are women, one after another repaying these loans. This is over 13 million loans that have reached this 68 million people. They pay back at over 98%. And it's because of that the money gets recycled and it goes back out, and it drives down the philanthropic cost of capital per person reached every time it recycles. And so it just goes down and down and down. And so it's not only, it makes us able to do things at scale, it makes it much more efficient.
That's such a great story, but it also is filled with all kinds of lessons about how to empower people and provide resources. And Patricia, you've been doing that. It's great to have you back at CGI, and I so admire the work of the Wayutea Foundation that you started. Tell us a little bit about that foundation, and how have you used partnerships, which is at the core of the whole idea of CGI, to reach indigenous people?
Oh, thank you so much, Hillary. Such an honor to be here again, and of course sharing the stage. And we are so grateful for the support that we have received throughout all these years. So I am a Wayu indigenous person, and the Wayu is a community that sits right on the border between Venezuela and Colombia, and it's about 500,000 people. When we started the foundation over 20 years ago, one child was dying a day of malnutrition. So to serve the community, we installed a water pump in a village donated by Katie Ford, who's the founder of Freedom for All, who's here with us. And then 2,800 people had water. We then opened a little preschool for 30 children, because this will guarantee that the kids will have 2 meals a day. Well, that grew. We are now taking care of over 68,000 children. But we understood very early on, Hillary, that we couldn't do this alone, that partnerships was key, and that we would have to have these partnerships with like-minded organizations. And it all started here. Jose Andres introduced us to you, and through CGI, we have been able to meet most of our partners. Direct Relief, sending humanitarian aid, medicine and supplies to hundreds of thousands of people. Acceso, sending food every week for thousands of children. Core Response, they help us with our operations. And Center for Disaster and Philanthropy, we have been able to build a well, acquire a water truck, and also install hand washing stations. So we are working really hard in sending humanitarian aid, but we also understand that we have to create regenerative programs that can help us achieve our sustainability, like our water program. And we have to talk, Matt. It's very simple. Everybody has to buy water there because we don't have any. So we have 3 trucks that were donated. And from every water truck load that we sell to those who can afford it, we give 1 free water truck to the community. And more than 90,000 people have received free water. So talking about partnerships, when Direct Relief came to us with the first donation of medicine and supplies, we thought it was massive. And when the proposition for the second donation came, I almost didn't take it, because I didn't know how I was going to do the distribution. And Ann Lee, founder of Core Response, who's also here, she said to us, you take it, and we will help you figure out the distribution. Well, nowadays, we have received 120 times the amount of their first donation. So that's the power of partnership.
Well, Adebayo, this is your first CGI, so welcome. And you are part of the 2024 CGI Greenhouse cohort this year, which supports social entrepreneurs around the world, connects them with social capital and the resources of this amazing CGI community. Now, you have a story, and I want you to tell your story, because you didn't just wake up one day, decide to create RxAll. You actually woke up from a coma after 20 days because of what you experienced. So I want you to tell our audience, both in the room and those who are watching the live stream, how you ended up creating this really important technology now in use in Nigeria, Uganda, Kenya, with many more countries to come.
Thank you so much, Secretary Clinton, and I really appreciate the warm welcome to yourself, Dr. Chelsea, and President Clinton, and the rest of the CGI team. I'm really happy to be here to share about my story, about the work that I'm doing. I believe it's not just a representation of my work, but also a way to use the stage to talk about the work that impact entrepreneurs like myself are doing in very difficult areas like in Africa and other developing parts of the world to change chronic issues on the ground. My story started 20 years ago when I was growing up as a teenager in Nigeria. I lived in a low-income community where our local pharmacy was at the heart of our social lives. It wasn't just a place where we got our medications. It was a place where we also purchased groceries like water. It was a place where we hanged out socially, and where we even took quick credit to buy things that were too expensive for us to afford. One day, I fell sick. And as usual, my dad went to our neighborhood store to get me my medication. I used a dose that afternoon and another dose in the evening. And I did not wake up the next day. I had gone into a 21-day coma. I almost died. But luckily, I pulled through. But that's not a story for 100,000 Africans who die every year from this issue. And as I got better, my dad told me about how he had confronted the local pharmacist. Why would you sell us? You know us. We're part of this community. Why would you sell us a fake drug? And the pharmacist said, I'm so sorry, profusely apologized to my dad. He said, there's no way I would have sold you guys a medication. You're the pastor of this community. Why would I sell you a fake medication? And I'm so sorry that this happened. When my daddy pressed him to tell us who supplied him the medication, this was the most amazing thing. He said he did not know, that he had so many suppliers, and he didn't keep the proper records of who was supplying him what. I was 15 years at the time, and that message was a deep impression on me, because I started to think of the millions of low-income families across Africa that relied on the pharmacy not just for medications, but for groceries, other daily needs. And if the pharmacists could not even assure the quality of what it was they were dispensing and selling, then who was safe across the continent? And so I made a decision that I was going to be a pharmacist, and I'm going to solve that problem. I qualified as a pharmacist, and then I took a policy and business degree from Yale and Harvard, where I told you I almost met you some years ago. And I started out RxAll, and primarily we are a data platform. And we use technology to help the pharmacists collect procurement and transaction data, aggregate it, and analyze it for insights. So we have three main components. The first is this device. It's a proprietary device. Shout out to Yale School of Management and the innovation ecosystem. They helped me take this idea that I had in the School of Pharmacy in Nigeria, but I didn't have the capital to make it. Because when I came to the School of Business here, I got the capital to eventually build this device. It's an AI spectrometer. It's proprietary to us. And it works with a mobile app on an Android phone. And you can do a quick test of the medication quality in 20 seconds to know if that medication is pure enough to consume.
Wow.
This is what this tool does. And since we've been commercial with this product in the last 5 years, we've collected over 100 million data points on quality across 20,000 of the most used medication SKUs. And we've been able to aggregate and segment them. We have the high-quality medications and the suppliers of those medications and the low-quality medications. And that way, we point the pharmacies into the high-quality medications. On top of that, we built a POS register that records all of the transactions that the pharmacies sell to the patients. And that information is what is used to help with demand forecasting so that medications are always on the shelf. And just like you, Matt, we've built out a microfinance profile for all the pharmacies that use this. And we've helped to unlock financing, working capital financing, to 3,000 women-owned pharmacies that couldn't access capital from the traditional banking system before. That now happens through us. And the 5,000 pharmacies in our network get high-quality medications every single month to over 3 million patients each month. So that's our work, that's my story.
Can you, sorry to interrupt. Yes. Can you tell everybody, because you told me backstage and I couldn't believe it, how the percentage of fake medication?
Yes, 30% of medicines in circulation across pharmacies in Africa are fake.
Wow.
The government is doing a lot of work, but typically they're constrained with budgets. And the issue with pharmaceuticals is that it's a trade commodity now. Really, just like you can buy mobile phones, you can make it in China or India and ship across the world. It's the same way medications are being produced now. Anyone can go, make those productions, and get a license to sell in the local markets. So it's very difficult. Imagine you have a staff strength of 500 people. How do you police that? This is the big issue. So official numbers typically with the government tends to be a bit lower. It goes in between 13 to 15%. Unofficial numbers that have been validated by third parties puts it about 30%. Wow. We're still in double digits either way, and it's a big issue.
Well, I think, Ade, the point that you're making so strongly is the way that technology can now help us with these problems. But we have to make sure that, number one, it is of high quality.
Yes.
And number two, people can afford it and understand it. And I want to go back to you, Matt, because when you were here in 2022, you said you wanted to leverage a $50 million investment from philanthropic capital to create a $1 billion investment portfolio to help 100 million more people across Africa, Asia, and Latin America get lasting access to clean water and sanitation, because it's really both, isn't it?
For sure.
So how's that going, and how's the partnership going?
Yeah, I realized I didn't answer that the first time, and you asked me. Yeah, no, so
it follows up on the interchange you two just had about how to do this.
So, well, again, for context, it's interesting. I'm remembering now that the first commitment we made here was in 2009, I believe, and that was to reach 50,000 people in Haiti. And we actually we beat that. We did well with that one. We were interrupted by the earthquake, but the subsequent year we met and exceeded that number. But to give an idea, the next pledge we made was to reach 100 million people, which is to give you an idea of this scale. So we've reached 18 million people so far. We're 100 million into that. Oh, I should say. So I'll try to do this quickly. There's another aspect to this. When Gary and I were in India about 10 years ago, we were kind of informally polling our MFI partners, we were there for a couple weeks, and we were going all around, and we must have met with 6 or 7 different partners, and every single one reported the same bottleneck, which was access to consistent, affordable capital, and which was amazing. It was a wonderful realization that the demand was just outstripping the capital that was in place to meet it, but it got us thinking, well, how do we get more capital into this system? So we started thinking about social impact investing. We went to some very smart people, our friends at Bank of America. And we ended up creating something called water equity. And what water equity is it's an asset manager for water. And so what we do essentially is we view the money, donor dollars and investment dollars have normally classically been kind of separate, right? We view it as kind of part of a spectrum. So we take the donor dollars and we use that money to, it's a terrible pun, but to financially plumb, so that we can follow along with commercial capital, and that way we can reach more people. And so that's one of the things we face is, at the grassroots level, certainly a lot of people tend to want that dopamine hit of, well, I gave this much money, I want to see where the well is, where's the village, who am I affecting? And where we tend to look at it as, it's hard to raise money for de-risking a loan portfolio, which is essentially what we're doing, but that's really the way to attack the problem. Finance really is the answer, and has been for us, and that's why we're able to announce 100 million people that we're going to reach, and we're on our way to doing it. So.
Look, I think that there's a lot of people here who are in the same position that you just described. How do you de-risk capital? How do you get concessionary capital? How do you get the assets that even poor people have to count as more capital, which is really the microfinance model, because it's not just their hard work, it's their trust and their community involvement. And Patricia, in the work that you're doing, trying to think about sustainable development in the context of supporting indigenous people, how are you thinking about that? How do you get resources into what is still a pretty isolated community that they can then use to empower themselves and build up their own resources and be able to make decisions for themselves?
Well, since the Wayuu is a matriarchal community, I think sustainability is already embedded in their worldview. But I think we have to put this in perspective. The New York government anticipates to spend a staggering $4.2 billion in the migration crisis this year. And we in Wayuu, that's about $40,000 to $60,000 per migrant per year. And we in Wayuu spend $1,750 per child per year. That is food, medicine, education, and tools. So while the real cost of migration is debated, it is clear that it's high. So I feel that if families want to stay in their homeland, I think we have to find a way to help them to do so.
No, I think that that's a very important insight. Sometimes it becomes very difficult. There's natural and man-made disasters. There's economic collapse, political oppression. We know all the reasons, but I think what you're doing is to show that it is possible, so that one community at least can live in a sustainable way without having to leave. And I think that's an important message. Ade, your technology has now grown to over 500 pharmacies.
5,000.
5,000, excuse me, 5,000, I misread that. 5,000 serving what? You said 3 million patients?
3 million patients use that network.
So how have you figured out how to work with local partners, community leaders? I mean, you show up with your machine. I'm sure that sort of worries some of the pharmacists you walk into their store and you say, here, I'm here to help you. I mean, how do you find a way to really engage them so that they can see this is working, it can work for me, it's not a threat?
Yeah, so primarily we put our stakeholders in the front and center of our work. There are actually three main stakeholders for us. It's the government regulators, whose primary function is actually the supervision of the drug supply chain. It's the pharmacist, who is responsible for ensuring that the high-quality medications get to the patients. And of course, it's the patients who need to know where to go to get high-quality medications. So for us, it's very important that when we are rolling out our technologies, we're not coming as a paternalistic provider of technology, but rather as someone who listens to what it is that's the main issue that they're facing. If you look at the government regulators, they actually have quality assurance labs. But the primary issue with that is that you want to get a test sample from a port to somewhere in the middle of the country and do a test, and that medication has to sit for 3 months before you know whether it's good or not to let into the country. People won't do that, so they smuggle through the borders, right? So one has to say that what we do is sit down with the government, for example, understand what those major issues are, and then help to align our technology towards use. For the pharmacists, it's the same thing. They don't have the extra capital to pay for this. So the way we do it is to build it not as a subscription model as you typically do in this part of the world, but as a share of transaction. So by saying that if we're able to make this as an affiliate pharmacy network and we point patients to go and buy from you, give us a share of that revenue, rather than you having to pay for that upfront. So there's no risk trial for them to uptake the technology. And then for the patient side of things, it's mostly advocacy. So social media advertising, influencer marketing, letting them first of all know that not every medicine that looks to you like it's good is actually good. Not every pharmacy that looks to you that it's good is actually good. You need to know, and then find the ones that are affiliated and do extra work to get high-quality medications out there. So that's how we do it, taking the stakeholders along that journey. And then one more important thing with the patients, we give them a channel for feedback. This is something that the government typically used to use the hospital system to do, but not very effective. People are afraid of doctors. Low-income people tend to be afraid of doctors. But the pharmacists, very easy to chat, tell them how they're feeling, and we use that as a channel to get the feedback and provide that data to the government so they can do their work better.
Well, I'm going to ask one last question of everyone as our time wraps up. And I'm going to ask you, we're focusing on what works. If you could make a change in government, in local community, and access to capital, whatever it might be, if you could make one change that would really enhance what you're doing, Patricia, or some person that you think could make a difference in what you're doing, could you tell us what could make your work even more effective going forward?
Well, I'll have to say, I have to tell you a little story in relationship to that. When we were in the pandemic, our area was one of the hardest hit. And we have, thanks through CDP, Core, and Global Giving, we have been able to purchase a significant amount of nutritional drinks. But we were under strict lockdown, and we couldn't distribute these drinks. And the situation became very dire, especially for children. And one of our team members, his name is Chelly, he took a risk, and he went out quietly every day because he couldn't bear seeing the children starving and us having these drinks in the office. So he quietly went out every day with a trolley, with a donkey, buy food, and he took these drinks and placed them in people's homes. So when things get very difficult, I always think of Chelly. And in answering your question, going back to partnerships, I feel that what we're doing at CDP and what we're doing with all the other partners and what we're doing here at CGI, we're on the right path. I wouldn't change anything. I would just bring more people over. We're not alone. And what we're doing here is working.
Oh, thank you so much, Patricia. So, Adebayo, what would you want to see change that would make what you're doing work even more?
Support to our entrepreneurs, especially as Africa comes of age. 60% of the population right now is under 25 years. 40 to 45% are under 15 years. So even though I'm on this panel and I'm the youngest person here, but I'm actually an uncle to 40 to 45% of people in Africa. I'm double their age. We need to give them the education so that they can produce technology like this. I don't have to leave, like you were saying, Patricia, I shouldn't have had to leave Nigeria to take something that I conceived in my mind and come to the US to make it, because I don't have the capital to do it. As you mentioned, let's keep our best and brightest back home, give them the education, give them the capital, give them the access to international markets to do their best work. That's what I need.
Well, I hope somebody out there hears him, because this looks like a good bet to me. And Matt, what about you? What do you see as something that could make a big difference in you and Gary and Water.org meeting this goal quickly and then going on to your next big goal?
Well, this idea really works. It works as well as President Clinton predicted it would over a decade ago. That's the exciting part. I think for me, to echo what Patricia said, for us it's about raising awareness, getting the word out. Had we stayed with the traditional charity model, we did the math, it would have taken us 600 years to get where we are right now. And so these new ways of approaching things, these new innovations, for us it's about spreading the word, and this is a great platform, this is a great place to do that, and you guys have always been great for us, so thank you as always. I'm an eternal optimist, and I believe that people believe in good ideas. And so I would encourage anybody to donate or invest. You know, if you're looking if you're seeking a competitive return, you know, as I said, we've proven these loans pay back at over 98%. They're very safe, and they're very dependable. And to me, the great story there is these women, one at a time, one after another, year after year, over 13 million times, paying these back. It's the most heroic, you know. And so for us, it's about these public-private partnerships, these corporate partners around the world, high net worth individuals, everybody, learning about this story, celebrating this story, because I believe once you do it, it is, as your husband once said, undeniable.
Well, let's show our appreciation for each of them and what they're doing to show what's working. Thank you so much. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Adebayo. Thank you, Patricia.
Please welcome back Dr. Chelsea Clinton.
Hello again. Yes, okay, good. Since you all said good morning, I appreciate the reciprocal hello. Over the course of the next couple of days, we certainly will hear a lot about many of the most pressing challenges and also many of the most necessary answers to meet those challenges. One area that we're increasingly focused on here at CGI is how to best expand access to resources and services related to mental health, because we know this is one of the most urgent areas of necessary work here in the United States and around the world. At CGI, one of our greatest strengths and joys is bringing together partners across the private, public, and nonprofit sectors to take big ideas into action. And one of our newest big ideas that we're bringing into action is the Coalition for Mental Health Investment, which we're proud to announce here today. This new coalition will sit alongside our existing CGI action networks to facilitate collaboration across sectors and areas of work. Because we know that when we share ideas and resources, we absolutely can accelerate bringing solutions to scale. So please join me in welcoming the following commitment makers who are some of the core partners of this new effort. Beck Smith from the Wellcome Trust. Jafadza Gagano from the African Venture Philanthropy Alliance, Jules Chappelle from Kokoro, and Kana Inamoto and Erica Ko from the McKinsey Health Institute. And I'm so happy to welcome Erica to the stage to share more about their work ahead.
Thank you so much, Chelsea. It's a privilege to be here. Poor mental health is an issue that touches nearly every one of us. Yet people across contexts and geographies, including many of us here today, still struggle to find and access needed support. Despite knowing what works, despite clear societal and financial benefit, mental health remains underfunded and under-prioritized. As my friend and mental health leader Shekhar Saxena once said, every country is a developing country when it comes to mental health. But today, we have an opportunity to change this. we are launching the Coalition for Mental Health Investment with a bold vision that within a generation, the level of mental health investment will match the scale of global need. Together with our coalition partners, African Venture Philanthropy Alliance, Clinton Global Initiative, Kokoro, Welcome, along with McKinsey Health Institute, we believe that investing in mental health is not only essential, but financially viable. That by harnessing the full range of capital around the world, we aim to show what is possible and the impact that can be achieved. Our efforts focus on 4 key objectives: connecting leaders across sectors to foster collaboration, inspiring global investment, especially in low and middle income countries, by showcasing a clear business case for mental health, de-risking mental health investment through innovative financing, including new and emerging models like brain awareness bonds, public-private philanthropic financing, and outcomes-based funding. And finally, integrating mental health into existing funding across sustainable development goals. We are deeply grateful for the invaluable guidance of our global advisory organizations. These include the Coalition for Scaling Mental Health, the Global Leadership Exchange, the Global Mental Health Peer Network, the International Alliance of Mental Health Research Funders, the Mental Health Innovation Network, UNICEF, United for Global Mental Health, and World Health Organization as an observer. We invite each of you to join us in this mission by scanning the QR code that is up here. If you are a funder, a philanthropist, an investor, a minister, a governor, a development bank, we have opportunities for radical collaboration among you. If you're an insurer, contracting or delivering services at scale, we need your ambition and expertise. If you are a policymaker, a researcher, an advocate, or a lived experience expert, we need your invaluable insights. The time is now for us to raise the ambition of our mental health financing. We are on the cusp of revolution in mental health science. By building on existing evidence-based treatments and community-led approaches that we know to be highly impactful, we can scale ever more effective and accessible care. This is not only a moral imperative, but a strategic one. A mentally healthy world is more productive and more resilient, better able to face the challenges that lie ahead. Together, we can make a difference. Thank you.
I just had an experience that I've never had before, which is that I got chills when I saw all the phones go up to scan the QR code. And I share that because there's just clearly such a clear recognition of the necessity of this work. And I look forward, if you'll forgive the presumption, of seeing more of you on stage next year when the coalition provides its progress report. And so please join me again in just a round of applause for Erica and the partners on the stage and the partners not on the stage for their urgent work to match the urgent need that is our mental health crisis. Thank you. Take a picture together. Also with us this morning are some extraordinary commitment makers who through CGI are expanding access to mental health services in communities all over the world. And I'd now like to invite some of them to the stage. Gary Barker from Equimundo, Chris Thomas from the Defensive Line. I'm sure many of you cheer for his son, Solly Thomas, if you're a Jets fan. Oh yes, there you go. Hannah Kemp from Sergo Health. Oscar Lopez from Born This Way Foundation, and Randy Mitev from the Center for Mind Body Medicine. And I am proud and honored to share a brief update on their extraordinary work. This year, Equimundo is committing to offer educational programming to 62,000 parents in Rwanda and Colombia to improve gender dynamics with a particular focus on supporting fathers to become more thoughtful caregivers and equitable partners. The defensive line, thank you, is committing to lead evidence-based suicide prevention training and mental health campaigns for 40,000 adults who work with young people in Black and brown communities across the United States. The goal is that those adults then will help young people feel comfortable discussing difficult topics and support them in seeking life-saving care when they need it. Please applaud. Thank you. And as you know, at CGI, we don't just announce new commitments to action. We support our partners throughout the life of their commitments every year and every day, and are always so incredibly encouraged when we receive project reports on how their commitments are going. One of those that we're proud to give an update on here today is a commitment that Pivotal Ventures, MTV, and Surgo Health made last year. They've reported significant progress in creating a first-of-its-kind youth mental health tracker. And since making this commitment at last year's meeting, they've launched a comprehensive survey and formed, importantly, a youth advisory board that provides insight and guidance throughout the process. The Born This Way Foundation and Cotton On have exceeded their original commitment and have distributed now more than $3 million to 65 organizations in 10 countries that are providing direct support for youth mental health in their communities. The Center for Mind-Body Medicine has been providing Ukrainians with evidence-based trauma healing and resiliency training to help develop capacity so that every person in Ukraine can have access to mental health resources. And in addition, the Center for Mind-Body Medicine today is announcing a new commitment to action to offer trauma healing services to more than 500,000 children and adults in Gaza. These commitments continue to prove what's possible as they continually bring mental health solutions, proven mental health solutions, to increasing scale and impact. Please join me in giving a very loud round of applause to all of them. Thank you so much. Thank you. See you. Thank you so much. It's so great to finally meet you. I have to give you up. Let's take a picture, please, everyone. Here. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm going to give that to you, friends. Thank you. And for the next announcement, I'd like to invite members of the Localizing Humanitarian Leadership Philanthropic Collaborative to join me on stage. And then I'm proud to turn it over to Haitham El Noor from Sudan Emergency Response Rooms to share more about the current situation in Sudan and their approach to innovative and impactful humanitarian aid.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here with us today, and thank you for CGI for providing this amazing platform to make the Sudanese voice heard. Sudan's brutal civil war that erupted in April 2023 has evolved into the worst humanitarian crisis in recent history. Sudanese people have suffered a lot, and tens of thousands of civilians have been killed and many more injured. More than 12 million people have been forced from their homes, struggling to survive with nearly no food, clean water, or medical services. Half of these displaced are children. Mass starvation and death are now imminent. Famine was confirmed in early July in parts of Darfur and in other 13 states and regions in Sudan. This catastrophe requires massive investment from global donors and all hand-on-deck humanitarian response if large famine is to ever be averted. But international humanitarian response has been inadequate, stifled by gross underfunding, insecurity, and strict regulation and impediment. An obstruction by of course, warring parties. Despite this extreme security risk and resources constraint, network of local mutual aid groups have emerged. The formidable ERR, the emergency response rooms, working along with civil society and feminist movement to provide humanitarian development and peace-building assistance in new, creative ways. In many places, they are the only lifelines for countless Sudanese people living through horrible violence and hardship. With more resources, mutual aid groups could prevent the spread of the famine, scale life-saving services, and work alongside large-scale program of national and international responders. Please, if you live today, remember the Sudanese people. Please remember that Sudanese people did everything from the Great Revolution of 2018 that was peaceful and nonviolent. They don't deserve this. Please remember that the slogan of the revolution will continue. Peace, freedom, peace, and justice. Hurriya, salam, wa adala. Thank you. Peace.
As Haytham said, we must rethink traditional approaches to humanitarian response and, of course, always invest in the people that are closest to the crisis to respond to it. So it's really with gratitude that networks like the Localizing Humanitarian Leadership Philanthropic Collaborative are sharing kind of what they've learned, and I hope many of you will further invest in their work to help expand distribution to vital resources and to fully undergird transferring decision-making and power and agency to affected communities and frontline workers. CGI has been working with this collaborative to accelerate the necessary partnerships and to drive a collective push around the world for centering mutual aid as an effective tool for responding to and funding the response to humanitarian crises. And together, we've worked with partners to build the case for why, although it shouldn't be necessary to build the case, but it is, locally led aid efforts, including mutual aid, should be at the center of addressing our most pressing challenges around the globe. So would you please join me in giving them one more round of applause as they are living the effort to localize aid. And I'm now proud to invite Amel Gourani from the Urgent Action Fund to share how through collective action and empowering and funding mutual aid groups, she and her partners are supporting the work that we just heard about in Sudan. And I hope as well that if you're as inspired by her work as I am, that you will further support her efforts. Please welcome her to the podium.
Good morning. As a Sudanese feminist and board member of Urgent Action Fund Africa, I'm grateful for the opportunity to shine a light on the devastating situation in my home country. I'm thrilled to tell you about our Clinton Global Initiative commitment to action to launch a groundbreaking collaborative effort of donors and philanthropic partners to support civil society organizations in Sudan through this coalition for mutual aid in Sudan. The coalition is distributing an initial $2 million to vetted local networks and movements of Sudanese responders by the end of this year, 2024. The goal is to provide more and better funding that is timely, direct, and flexible to Sudanese civil society. Importantly, this type of funding strengthens local capacity and agency of the Sudanese people and aims to center marginalized groups. Our intention is to increase that funding to $4.5 million by 2026. We commit to drawing attention to the emergency in Sudan among peer philanthropists and galvanize the $4.5 million in contributions in the coming 2 years. Please join me in acknowledging our other coalition members, including the coalition's initial funders, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Center for Disaster Philanthropy, Global Giving, Global Fund for Women, Humanity United, Safira Fund, Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, Urgent Action Fund Africa, VTOL Foundation, and the 6 coalition partners providing technical support, including ALNAP and the Center for Humanitarian Leadership, CORE, Humanitarian Leadership Academy, Safer World, and Shabaka. This coalition leverages the power of philanthropy to innovate and to pilot and provide new avenues for channeling funds to Sudan while navigating risk with care. We center funding mechanisms that provide urgent and much-needed support to mutual aid efforts and local groups, reaching the most vulnerable people in Sudan. We hope that more philanthropists and funders, including you who are here today, will join us in supporting Sudan at this time of immense need. Thank you.
Our next segment features one of our commitment makers, the UAE's Global Food Tech Challenge, who are joining us to launch their 3rd edition of the competition.
Let's talk about feeding the world. By 2050, there will be 10 billion people, almost 2 billion more than today. It will take immense amounts of water, energy, and time to produce enough food for everyone, and that's if everything goes to plan. Climate change is making our environment hotter and drier, and that's not good for food. Disease, disaster, and conflict can also make getting food to our tables difficult. And then there's food waste. Too much waste. We don't want waste. Don't want to waste time, don't want to waste resources, don't want to waste food. So, let's fix this. Fortunately, entrepreneurs and innovators all over the world are working on incredible solutions. So how do we find the needle in the haystack? From its home in the United Arab Emirates, the Food Tech Challenge has found more than 1,000 innovators from 98 countries who are working towards better, more sustainable food security. And we need more. More researchers, more entrepreneurs, more disruptors to revolutionize traditional food systems and to scale these ideas from the UAE, where projects can take root, grow, and expand to the world, including the most underserved global markets. This is a global problem that needs global voices and global contributions, and the Food Tech Challenge is where you can find them. With $2 million in cash grants, in-kind support, and access to world-class partners, this is where the future of food is.
Please welcome to the stage the co-chairs of the Food Tech Challenge, Her Excellency Mariam Al-Maheri and Rima Al-Makarab.
A wonderful good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for being here with us. So, I want to first start by thanking the Clinton Global Initiative for hosting us and partnering with us for the Food Tech Challenge. I also want to thank our partners, the Gates Foundation and the CGIAR, for a great partnership. Now, Rima and I come from the United Arab Emirates, probably more known for the cities of Abu Dhabi, our capital, and Dubai. We're a young country. We're going to be 53 years old this year. And if you think about our journey, we're in one of the hottest, driest regions in the world, water-stressed, but we've been able to thrive and grow going from around 300,000 people in the 1970s to now over 9 million people. Over 200 nationalities are living in the UAE, and we've been able to grow and thrive to these numbers. I think there's about 20 million people or tourists coming into our country every year. And the key here is innovation. In everything we do, we have to innovate. We have to think outside the box. And so Food Tech Challenge really came out of the need to innovate because of the region, because of the environment that we're living in. And so when we started looking at the technologies that we could bring to the UAE and growing food in the desert all around the year in a clean and sustainable way, we thought, why not bring this out to the global stage to fix our food systems that are unfortunately broken? And I'm sure all of you have heard of COP28, which was hosted in the UAE in Dubai last year. And it was the first time we actually got food systems on center stage at a climate COP. And so with that, we were able to get 160 heads of states to sign the Emirates Declaration on Food and Ag. And this is basically their political will and commitment to help solve the problems we have in our food systems. We also were able to announce the great partnership we have with the Gates Foundation. We announced a $200 million partnership to really drive innovation in ag, especially for smallholder farmers. And so with that, Food Tech Challenge is really here to ignite the global community to help solve a global challenge. Rima.
Thank you, Mariam. Good morning, everyone. It is such an honor to be here with all of you, and of course with President Clinton, Secretary Clinton, and Chelsea, who have been lifelong champions in creating a more resilient, more sustainable future for all. Across the world, thousands of startups are working to find new ways to grow, preserve, and distribute our food supply. These are some of the brightest minds on the planet finding solutions to reshape the future of food. But no matter how brilliant they are, entrepreneurs need to be supported. They need to plug into an ecosystem of partnership, investment, talent, policy, all working together to ensure that these good ideas grow into great solutions. So in UAE, we've learned that one of the keys to addressing global and local challenges is to combine innovation with partnership and inclusivity. We've learned that investing in early-stage solutions is critical to achieving transformative outcomes. And we've learned that bringing all voices to the table across borders, sectors, and perspectives unlocks progress. The Food Tech Challenge is opening the flow of ideas to the world so that everyone facing similar challenges is not only part of designing the solutions, but can also access them in more equitable ways. With $2 million in cash grants and access to a network of partners, including our wonderful hosts at CGI, the Gates Foundation, and other leading UAE and global ag tech players, we're giving innovators the funds, tools, and networks they need to bring their ideas to life. So today, we invite everyone, all of you change makers, innovators, and investors, please join our growing network of partners or apply to our Food Tech Challenge and help us change the future of our global food security. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Please welcome Maria Ressa.
I like the apple box. It always reminds me I'm short. But look, I will very quickly take you through. I was told to talk to you about good news. Not my strongest point, but I have 3. And to give you action points, I have 3. So the first on the good news is that I became a journalist because information is power. Almost everything you've talked about here today won't happen if you don't have integrity of information, right? And yet, our world today, the present moment that we live in, debates facts. We don't agree on a shared reality. So what you do today will determine not just our future, but also our past. We are in the present moment of the past where everything you do will determine the future and the past. Okay, so my good news. Well, I'm not in jail. That's the first. And the 11 criminal charges are now down to 2 after 8 years, right? I still have to ask for permission to travel, but okay, I can deal with that. The Supreme Court has been giving permission to travel. The second one is Radio Free Europe's Alsa Kumasheva, unjustly imprisoned in Russia, was released in a prisoner exchange last August, and she is here today. Yeah, awesome. Look, petite women, right? They keep wanting to put us in prison. I don't know why. And then finally, you know, he's not here, but you've heard him mention Nobel Peace Laureate Muhammad Yunus is now leading Bangladesh, right? So let me go to your action points. I gave you good news. They're good news. Action point. So the first is download, the second is contribute, and the third is act. The first to download. I'm tired of being the punching bag after getting 90 hate messages per hour on social media. Women leaders, women activists, women journalists are first attacked, right? We've talked about the insidious manipulation of tech, so we've looked all around the world for countries that are using the Matrix protocol to build their websites on it, because if you care about data privacy, if you care about the lack of manipulative algorithms, you walk into deliberative technology, the Matrix protocol. Audrey Tang in Taiwan built on the Matrix protocol. So 2 years ago, Little Rappler, a small news group of about 120 people in the Philippines, we began to build. Because you can only be a punching bag for so long, right? And begging big tech to change hasn't helped. And it's gotten worse as Americans go to the polls. So what we did is we rolled out last December a Matrix protocol chat app. Please download. That's your action point 1. Action point 2. In that Matrix protocol, we will bring in Brazil, Indonesia, South Africa, kind of a future of news, right? So again, much more forward. Sorry, my action point 2 is different now. How are these news groups going to survive? Well, money, advertising has also gone to big tech, right? The investments, generative AI alone in 2023 got $23 billion, right? All of it is sucking up the money. So we created in 2019, and it's moved it forward, the International Fund for Public Interest Media. My co-chair is Mark Thompson. He became the head of CNN last year on October 6th. October 7th. Yeah, so that's when, but what we did last year, at the end of last year, the International Fund for Public Interest Media raised $53 million that by the end of this year, $30 million of that will be going to news groups in the global south, because we are going to have to help those groups survive this time period. And our goal is not just survival, but to find these long-term solutions to structural problems that are corrupting us all, right? Because think about it, corruption begins in the information ecosystem. If lies spread faster than facts, how are you going to act? How will civil society act? And then finally, the last one, act, right? The act is actually, how are we going to fix our information ecosystem? How will we make it safer for journalists? It's not just by producing more content. It is in the long term, education. In the medium term, legislation. Please support that. And finally, in the short term, just us. An influencer marketing campaign for facts, something we piloted in the Philippines, has been rolled out in India, in Indonesia. It was the Facts First PH pyramid, but for 3 months in 2022, and we've moved it forward, we had 150 different groups working together. And every day, the 6 news groups would push out fact checks. You know they don't spread on social media, right? So everyone else, the mesh layer, the distribution, every day should share a boring fact check, but add emotion. Share it with emotion on social, and you cannot use anger. And what we found is something Americans are living through today. Inspiration spreads as fast as anger. That's pretty cool, right? Let me end it with this. You are all here. There are so many different things that are vying for your attention, but everything will be impossible if you do not have integrity of information, integrity of facts. So please, support your journalists. Thank you.
Please welcome Mayor David Holt.
Good morning. Oklahoma City is a city of 700,000 people. We are 52% white, 48% non-white. A poll taken 2 weeks ago of the presidential race in our county showed the 2 candidates tied 45-45. Demographically and politically, we are a microcosm of the nation. But things are working in Oklahoma City. Let me tell you how and why. Throughout the 1980s, we experienced an economic depression. And in 1995 came the darkest day of all. On April 19th of that year, almost 30 years ago, an American right-wing extremist killed 168 of our residents by detonating a bomb in front of our federal building. And I couldn't possibly stand in front of an audience at the Clinton Global Initiative and not express appreciation for President Clinton's leadership in the days that followed. In response to this act that was intended to spark a civil war, President Clinton prioritized unity over division. That ethos has defined our city's political culture ever since. When rescue workers reached out for the hand of a trapped survivor in 1995, they didn't ask them who they voted for in the last election, and we still don't. We are setting aside the things that divide us, and we are finding common purpose. I was elected mayor with 78% of the vote. Almost immediately, I led our community through a process of developing a major $1.1 billion initiative to invest in our city's quality of life. That program, which we call MAPS 4, proposed 16 projects, including a civil rights center, a family justice center for survivors of domestic violence, a hub of services to divert people from jail or prison, mental health crisis centers, truly affordable housing for those experiencing homelessness, and youth centers, among many other wonderful things. That initiative passed with 72% of the vote in 2019, and we've since passed 2 more major initiatives with 71 and 66%. Over 70% of our residents routinely tell pollsters that our city is on the right track. And in 2022, I was challenged for my re-election by MAGA extremists, and I beat them by 40 points. Thank you. When it comes to our most critical decisions as a community, we are passing initiatives and electing mayors time and again with overwhelming majorities that seem otherwise impossible in modern American politics. Oklahoma City is evidence that there are a pluralistic 70% of Americans in the middle, normal Republicans, Democrats, and independents, who are pragmatic and just want to work together to get things done. I am a registered Republican, but that common ground I share with the 70% of people in the middle is fertile with opportunity. In Oklahoma City, as in many American cities, we elect mayors in a top-two system that allows all the voters to see all of the candidates and forces all of the candidates to face all of the voters. This is critical because unlike a closed partisan primary system, our system incentivizes compromise. And compromise is ultimately the foundation of Oklahoma City's success. I can't help but point out that compromise was so central to President Clinton's time in office that they practically invented a new word for it: triangulation. No modern president has used compromise more aggressively or more effectively. You have to listen to those who bring a different perspective. And then you actually have to incorporate their perspective in the outcome. I do this with such regularity that I've even been accused of just trying to please everybody. To which I say, yes, that's my job. Look, as long as you get what you want out of an outcome, it's okay to let the other person win too. You don't even have to be convinced of their argument. You just have to recognize their moral right to be a part of the solution. You have to stop thinking that your first priority is to stop the other person from getting what they want. In an ideal outcome, almost everyone wins. And all we do is win in Oklahoma City. In the 3 decades since the bombing, Oklahoma City has experienced a renaissance. The foundation for that success is our commitment to the basic American principle of compromise that has been lost in modern American politics. Through an electoral system that establishes the middle of the spectrum where it truly exists, we elect leaders who represent the 70% of our residents who are eager to set aside the things that divide us to find common purpose. As a result, Oklahoma City is working. I believe that given the right system, approach, and leadership, the rest of America can do the same. Thank you.
You have to keep the spirit alive. You have to keep the work alive. You have to believe in possibility. You have to cultivate a culture of possibility. You have to keep this alive.
Please welcome Governor Josh Shapiro, Suyen Barahona, and President Bill Clinton.
Please. Well, here we are. I want to thank both of you for being here and explain to all of you why we asked them to come together. The Americans here know that Josh Shapiro may be sitting on the most important time bomb in America.
No pressure.
We're waiting to see how Pennsylvania votes. But I wanted you to know, because before he was governor, he was attorney general, and he has worked very hard to make people in his state, without regard to party, believe in a democratic system, in the integrity of the vote, and the fact that wherever you are in your journey, you can get a fair deal there.
Mm-hmm.
And there are lots of people who are working hard to convince people of the opposite. Then, Sue Yen lives a different reality. And she has to pay the price, or has had to for a long time, of being without a democratic fallback, an alternative. So I want you to hear their stories and think about yours. And think about the world we're going into. For those of you who've been here a lot, you know, I don't have to read these notes. I think we're living in a totally interdependent world. Divorce is not an option. The only question is, how will we respond to our interdependence? And a lot of people believe, as I do, that we should all live under the same set of rules, and that we should guarantee that everybody has a chance to live their dreams and take care of their children. A lot of other people believe the main purpose of civic activity is to guarantee a dominance to the people who look and think and act as they do. So we asked these two people here to make the case that in good times and bad, free people are more likely to make better decisions if they follow a set of accepted rules. And you can see the worst that can happen is that you're about to hear from two totally remarkable people. And you'll be glad you did. So, Governor Shapiro, let's start with you. Before the world thought America would always be hanging by a fingernail waiting for Pennsylvania's votes to come in, you were already there, and as Attorney General, you had some responsibility to make sure you had an honest political system and one that worked. Have you succeeded, and do you think it's as important as you always did? And why?
Well, Mr. President, thank you for hosting us. And it's an honor to be here on this panel with you and to engage in this important conversation. I guess I would begin by saying no one ever succeeds in democracy or in guaranteeing a free society. It's always a work in progress. I'm honored to serve as the 48th governor of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And in my office in the state capitol in Harrisburg, there are portraits of those who came before me. And so I am literally judged every day by William Penn and Ben Franklin looking down at me. Ben Franklin, after signing the Constitution, walked out on the streets of Philadelphia, the cobblestone streets. He was met by a fellow Philadelphian. She looked at him in the eye and said, "Mr. Franklin, do we have a monarchy or a republic?" Franklin looked at his fellow Philadelphian and said, "We have a republic if you can keep it." And so I very much believe that it is my responsibility, not just because Franklin was a predecessor, sounds crazy to say, but as an American, that I have a responsibility to keep it every day. As Attorney General, I was called to court 43 different times when the former president and his allies sued us. First, to make it harder for people to vote, and then second, to make it so those votes wouldn't count back in 2020. By the way, he went 0-43. We went 43-0, and we had a free and fair, safe and secure election, and our democracy continued. It's not lost on me that our courts held, but also that even though we were successful, the work continued. And that work continues to this day. There are real threats against our democracy. And while office holders have a responsibility to do our jobs in order to protect it, the truth is, as Franklin challenged us to do, it's ordinary Americans who have the responsibility to rise up and demand more and seek justice and always look for a way that we can be more free, more fair, more just, either through their own actions or by calling on their elected leaders to take certain acts. And so I very much view this as a work in progress, one that began in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, one that I feel we have a unique responsibility to defend, and one that I'm working my tail off on every single day to make sure that this wonderful experiment in democracy continues.
Thank you. So, Susan, your political life has been somewhat different. Your experience has been different. Tell them about it and where you are now.
Well, first of all, I just want to express my gratitude and my sense of humbleness also being here with all of you, change makers, trailblazers, and thank you so much to CGI and to you, Mr. President, for having me here. I am from Nicaragua. I've been a human rights activist, I've been a feminist, and been involved in the last 2 decades in the struggle for democracy and justice in my home country. For those of you who don't know where Nicaragua is, it's right in the center of the Americas, not the US, the center of the Americas. I got involved in politics because I am a firm believer that to strengthen democracy, we need belligerent civil society, social movements, independent social movements, pushing those agendas, but that we also needed more women to hold those positions of power in politics, and that we needed to work together to move forward agendas for human rights and democracy. And I got involved in politics because at that point we also saw a group of many other women, the broader women's movement, saw the beginning stages of the consolidation of a dictatorship in my country. Unfortunately, that is what has happened. It is a dictatorship, a family dynasty, where there is the head of the government, Daniel Ortega, is called the president, and then his wife is the vice president. And they have established a brutal dictatorship. And in the run-up to the elections in 2001, 6 months before the elections, as many of us were demanding free and fair elections, and after also a set of years of uprising and also, unfortunately, crimes against humanity that have been committed and thousands of incarceration, groups of candidates for the presidency, human rights defenders, peasant farmers, youth activists, we were sent to prison. I was taken from my house in the presence of my 4-year-old son and disappeared for about 81 days. And under conditions of torture, I spent 606 days in prison along with others. My case is not only mine. Unfortunately, 5,000 Nicaraguans have gone through this experience, and millions of women are going through this experience. There was a special viciousness against those of us who were women, and 4 of us from the political party that I led. I was the president of that political party, UNAMOS. And And it was because they wanted to let us know that the political space is not where we should be. And so I was kept in isolation for the whole time. I was finally able, along with 222 political prisoners, to be released last year, thanks to negotiations. Almost hostage negotiations between the US government, who offered to bring us to the United States. So they released us, and as we were flying, we were stripped of our nationality, and all of our properties have been seized. And then, of course, also we were banished from our country. So I'm here actually under very extraordinary circumstances, because I was banished and stripped of my nationality. And that's been also the case for another group of 135 political prisoners that have been able also to be released in Guatemala. You know, I think one of the objectives of the dictatorship was to really break me, break my passion, break my dreams, and I think they failed miserably. I am here today, and I've been very fortunate in terms of having an opportunity of leading a new fund. It's called the Colmena Fund. It used to be called the Women's Political Leadership Fund, but it's a fund that wants to accelerate the power of women political leaders in the global South, especially women who are coming from most marginalized communities. And it's a fund, it's called Colmena because in Spanish, Colmena means hive, and it wants to celebrate the power of the community of women political leaders around the world. It's a global initiative. So not only am I continuing the struggle for democracy in Nicaragua and denouncing the brutal dictatorship that continues, but I have used, I think, that pain, but also the anger too, and have channelized it now in continuing the struggle and working towards supporting women to advance their power and in the global South.
Thank you. So, Governor, does it surprise you that there have been so many attacks on the American electoral system and attempts to sow distrust in it and to break it down? And what should we do about it generally? I mean, I was stunned the other day to see that our Georgia had required that all ballots henceforward be hand counted, which, you know, if it were in some circumstances, it might make you think they'd be more honest, but it's almost impossible to avoid all the possibilities for mischief if you have millions of votes and they all have to be hand counted. The Indians, interestingly enough, who have, you know, it's now the largest country in the world, they have dual placement of all their machine-issued votes. They send one copy of the ballot to the local community and another copy to the national capital simultaneously. And all parties have access to the place where they're cast. So now in America, we've got an enormous effort, anyway, in many places, to make the system more arbitrary and more subject to local influence. So what should we do about it?
Mr. President, I think there's a political answer and a governmental answer to the underlying question you're asking. First, let me take the governmental side. We should all agree on a few foundational principles about this nation and how our elections are run, right? We value our freedom. We cherish democracy. We love the country. And then we could fight like hell about healthcare policy or some other thing. And that while we may exercise partisan tendencies in an election, the administration of those elections should really be nonpartisan. It's one of the reasons why my first appointment in my cabinet for our Secretary of the Commonwealth, that's the person who oversees the elections, was a Republican. I'm a Democrat. That should be a nonpartisan exercise where you focus on including more people in our democracy, not excluding anyone. It's one of the reasons why I use my executive authority as governor to bring automatic voter registration to Pennsylvania. So you go to the DMV, get your license, get your ID card, you're registered to vote. We've seen a 90% jump in the number of people registering to vote just because of that. And by the way, it's about an even split, Republicans and Democrats. Nobody got an advantage because we want to administer the system in a fair way. I'm confident that Republican and Democratic clerks alike in Pennsylvania will again do their jobs to make sure we have a free and fair, safe and secure election. That's the governmental side of it. There's a political side to this that's really dangerous, where you have one candidate, one party, seeking to limit who gets to participate in the process. Because A, they want to score an advantage, as opposed to building a coalition. They want to limit who gets to sit at the table. If you want to go back in history and look at who figured out how you got to grow the tent and build a coalition, see Bill Clinton, 1992, 1996 in Pennsylvania. So politically, they want fewer people at the table because they feel like that gives them a shot to win. But there's something really deeper and more dangerous for our democracy beyond one election cycle. And that is, if you're showing up to try and lead the country, lead the state, lead the city, and you don't want certain people to vote because you don't believe their voices matter, you don't want them to sit around the table of progress, you don't want to hear what they have to think, then ultimately you're creating not just a dangerous short-term political situation, but a much more dangerous long-term political situation where you are forcing people to be in a situation where they feel like they are an other, where they feel like they're a second-class citizen. And that doesn't work in a democracy in the long term. And that just creates adversity, it creates a level of anger, it creates a situation where the system can't work as effectively. We have to get back in this country to a place where we want to encourage participation, encourage a love of democracy and country, and then fight like hell based on our ideas and build coalitions that are big and broad on our views and our values. And we're getting too far away from that. The good news is the people who have sought to create others in society, the people that have sought to push people aside and not include them at the table of progress, they tend to lose most races in America. And that's a good thing for the long-term health of our nation.
Thank you. When you hear the governor talking about this, and you think about what Nicaragua's been through, does it feel strange to you?
Actually, I want to share that as we're seeing more and more discourses of like populist discourses around the world, it reminds me a lot of also the beginning stages of what was happening in Nicaragua too. And I feel that it's important to look at these experiences and to understand that dismantling democracy is a process, sometimes of many years, and that there are early signs that we sometimes do not pay attention to until it's very, very late. That has happened, I think, throughout many countries in the world. The international community has also missed those early signs until it's this bad as it is in Nicaragua. And I just want to say, the dismantling of democracy in my country began with the co-optation and controlling of the judicial system and trying eliminating the competition so that basically you were having elections where there really wasn't a competitor, or was also basically stealing, robbing the elections, the control over all of the branches of governance, and doing away with the checks and balances, and doing away also with the rights of civil society, the capacity to mobilize, to organize. More than 5,000 organizations have been dismantled, civil society organizations. There are no journalists, independent media open in the country, and you see how important it is, all of these components in order to be able to have a healthy democracy, but it's that early sign of the co-optation and the control of the judicial system is essential. And then, of course, it's been a dictatorship that has been ruling out of terror, the control of the military and the police. And as we're doing now also this work around the fund, the Comina Fund, and looking at the experiences of women around the world, I do want to say that what we're seeing globally is that women are delivering. That's what's working. We are working. We are at the forefront. We are they're leading the transformation and sometimes the struggle to sustain democracy, to advance democracy in so many parts of the world. You're seeing how women are effective leaders at the local level, at the national level. The results that you see in terms of inclusive policies, in sustained peace agreements sometimes, and the important role that they're playing in economic growth. There is evidence that are demonstrating that us women, we are effective leaders, yet we continue to be underrepresented, and including here in the U.S. and in other countries that are
we may be about to change that.
Call themselves strong democracies. In this super election year, we've committed a study that's showing that basically 2/3 of the countries who've held elections just this year, there's a reversal in terms of women's political representation. And of course, we want to go beyond just the representation. It's not only about numbers. It's about really women having the power to move forward their agendas and transform and to have inclusive policies and just transform their communities and to be able to strengthen democracy. And that requires, of course, tackling the barriers, violence, the lack of funding, the need for violence. I want to highlight the violence. Like 82%, of the women parliamentarians have said that they are facing harassment, misinformation campaigns. This is all deeply, deeply impacting really our democracies, and this is happening in the global south and in the north, in countries like the U.S. And so we want to catalyze funding so that there's more funding for women political leaders, especially those who are coming from more marginalized backgrounds, because to be the only indigenous woman, at the table, or an Afro-descendant, or from the LGBTQ communities, all of that violence is heightened, and we want to really create change this ecosystem. We need to come together to actually generate an ecosystem that can support women leaders to be able to thrive. to enter in politics, to be able to get elected, but especially to be able to thrive and deliver on those agendas. And that's part of what we're working. And so, and this is a challenge in democracies also like the U.S.
Thank you. Well, if I could put the two together, we want a world in which women can thrive as political citizens and in other ways, which means that when they run, if they win, they win, and if they lose, they lose, but we don't get the two mixed up. And we still have many countries in the world where after the elections come in, most everybody doesn't believe them. So as we break here, because we're overtime, but I thought they were so good, I hated to interrupt them. I don't think they were. I've actually lost 2 elections in my life, and I hated it. Anybody that tells you can learn more from losing than winning hasn't lost enough. On the other hand, it made me feel even better when I was able to overcome those defeats. In other words, the thing about a free system is you have to trust the voters and you have to be prepared to lose, as well as determined to win. And we're basically living in a world today where either there is no democratic option or where people would like it if there seemed to be one, as long as they always win. And I've done this a long time, and I don't think anybody ever loved politics itself any more than I did, who got to be president. I loved it. But you don't always get to win, especially if you believe in anything. Sometimes, I remember I lost I see some of my Georgetown University classmates here. I once deliberately lost a student election because I didn't want to liberalize the curriculum. And that was viewed as a very reactionary position. My point is, if you really want more women and more diversity in politics, it has to be safe and supportive, but you also have to have an honest system for counting the votes. And we also all have to be prepared to lose if we want our winning to mean anything. And I'm very worried now all over the world that people feel less and less able to accept the honesty of the results. So I ask you all to think about that. I hated getting beat, but it was part of the deal. And it's what made the debates honest. It's what made the fight honest. It's what's made the election night gripping. And if you really want to be free, you have to be free to win and free to lose. And I could also like to say, I hope I speak for everybody, that I'm glad there's someone like you in the world trying to bring these opportunities to people in every country. And I'm glad, Governor, that we got someone like you in a profoundly important position who is widely viewed not only as a great leader, but as completely straight, playing it down the line, fair to everybody. If we're ever going to bring our societies that are fractured back together, people have to believe that there are still people like you, not just in the history books, but going to work every day. Let's give them a big hand. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good job.